Thank you. And I want to thank the witnesses. I particularly want to thank Mrs. Ahmet. Your country has suffered so much for so long, and our heart goes out to you. I want to raise a question about how this happened. It really goes to what you're saying, Mr. Glassner. You know, there's a number of people on the other side of the aisle who have a view, and I share it, that we should not be in as many of these long-term conflicts as possible. But I want to ask some questions about what the consequences are of the way in which the President of the United States acted, with literally no notice to our Kurdish allies. And thank you, Mr. Palmer. With no notice to the State Department, with no notice to the Department of Defense, with no notice to anybody. And we are seeing the creation of an unnecessary and total avoidable humanitarian disaster. That's the concern I have at this moment. So some of the questions I have are about who is in that band that is affected by the Turkish incursion. And I'll ask you, Ms. Torres, you might have the best statistics, but other people can't. How many people live in that area that is subject to the Turkish incursion?
I mean, it's difficult to estimate. I've seen numbers in the millions, but I'm not sure if one of my colleagues might have better numbers.
Well, does anybody have how do we not know before the president went in there how many people would be in the line of fire? Mr. Palmer, do you have any idea what the population is in that area?
No, Congressman.
Ms. Ahmet?
In the border area, approximately 3 million people are living. Not only these recent areas that Turkey got control of, but also in west of Euphrates, and also my hometown, Afrin, is under Turkish occupation.
Let me go on. What I understood, I think, Ms. Torres, you said, is 160,000 or so people have been displaced.
That's
right?
correct.
And they literally, this means they're not in their home, right? They went to bed the night before the president made the phone call, and the day after that, they didn't have a home, right? Where did they go?
So I think some have gone to camps, some have gone to IDP camps, some have been injured along the way.
What camps? We don't have the camps there to accommodate. They're all overfilled already. Mr. Palmer, you know, one of the extraordinary things about our military is their capacity to do logistics, to plan, to execute a very complicated mission. Would it be like Logistics 101? Before you take an action that's going to displace 160,000 people, that you have some idea where they're going to go?
Congressman, I don't think I'm qualified necessarily to speak to military strategy as a whole. My mission over there was more focused on counter-Islamic State operations.
Well, I appreciate your discipline, but it's like obvious. If you're going to do something where 160,000 people are going to have to leave their homes, and you feel some responsibility because it's the action you're allowing or you're taking, you're going to make some arrangements. I will ask you this, Mr. Palmer. You spoke about just the fighting force in the extraordinary band of brothers situation you had with Kurdish allies, right? But there were also Syrian fighters who were standing up to that monster Assad who live in that area as well, correct?
Congressman, most of my operations were specifically with the SDF. I know there were other groups available or out there, but mine was specifically the SDF.
But like in Raqqa, there were many Arab fighters who were standing up against Assad, and that was a brutal fight there, correct? So, I mean, I'll just ask Mr. Glassner, you're right about the plan should come first, not just the phone call. You know, go, hey, my friend, Mr. Erdogan, you know, do what you wish. What is the peril to the Arab fighters living in many of these cities now that the Russians and the Assad regime has free hand to roam around there? Do you have any apprehension that reprisals will occur?
Yes, and although I am very, very critical of the way this was done, it's also true that we should be realistic that, I mean, any transition,
You know,
policy is going
just
to-
don't say that. There will be consequences, but when it is on us, because we make a voluntary decision about how we're going to execute, and the consequences are that innocent lives are lost, that is not subject to being washed away because it's, quote, realistic. I mean, I want to say to my Republican colleagues, there's two issues here. I know my time's up. One is, what's our long-term policy there? And there is fault that can be ascribed all around. But to take an action where in one fell swoop, with no consultation, no forewarning, we betray allies who've been with us, and we leave innocent people at the mercy of people who are going to get them. I don't get that. That's not what I call American. I yield back.